Well, good morning, friends. I read a quote the other day that said this: "You'll go crazy if you spend all your time analyzing the depths of evil without gazing at the beauty of God." We live in evil times and dark days. We are inundated with bad news, and we have seen the face of evil in so many ways recently. And if you're anything like me, you have grown weary. I am weary of the bad news. I am weary of the bickering and the division. I'm weary of the pride that I see. My heart has been heavy and sad. And one of the most helpful things you can do today and any day is to slow down and look at the beauty of God. And so I want to do that together for a couple minutes today. Jonathan Edwards, one of the great pastors and theologians in the history of the world, liked to say that experiencing God and seeing his beauty happifies us. Now, Edwards was brilliant, and I'm sure he knew that happified isn't a word, but I love it. I would love something in my life that happifies me no matter what is going on. And the reality is that seeing and experiencing the beauty of God can do that. And the reason is that your soul was created with a massive longing and a huge need, and the stuff of this world doesn't have the beauty and the glory to fill it. Only God can. And so if your heart will be satisfied and if your life will be truly happified, especially in the midst of the pain of this world, it will be to God and to his beauty that you must turn. So I want to help you see the beauty of God today in order that this vision of God might happify you today. A few years ago, I was at a Christian conference and saw a person with a tattoo that said El Ra'ai. It's Hebrew. El is a word for God, and Ra'ai is a verb which means sees. There is a story in the book of Genesis involving a woman named Hagar. She was a servant, and her story is a sad story as she was mistreated and she was overlooked. If you read the story, you will notice that Hagar's master wouldn't even use her name. She was just called the servant. And so Hagar ran from her circumstances. And so she was alone, she's out in the wilderness, and she came to a well. God does a lot of good things near wells in the Bible, and he does something great here. So here is this servant girl who was no doubt upset, feeling alone, feeling forgotten, feeling like nobody sees her. But then an angel of the Lord shows up, and the first word he says is Hagar. He calls her by name. And God speaks to her through this angel, and after that visit, Hagar called God El Ra'ai, the God who sees me. She named the well where she was Be'er Lahai Ra'ai, which means the well of the living one who sees me. For her, this was an amazing thought. The living God who rules over the world and has big, grand purposes. He sees me. God is not overlooking me or unaware of my circumstances. He sees me. And what a comfort that is to know that God is El Ra'ai. He is the one who sees me. He is not unaware of my circumstances. He is not too consumed with more important matters. What a great comfort today, especially for those who feel forgotten, marginalized, and overlooked. God sees you. To those of you who are feeling overwhelmed and wondering what God is doing, El Ra'ai is not blind or unaware. He sees you. And you might say, well, it doesn't feel that way. But just because you can't see God or what he is doing doesn't mean that he doesn't see you and isn't working. In Psalm 74, which is a very dark psalm, times are so bleak, you can go check it out. But in the middle of the psalm, in verse 12, the psalm writer says, "Yet God, my King, is working salvation in the midst of the earth." So we may not be able to see it, but God is working in the midst of difficult times to save and heal and restore. There was another moment when Jesus hung on a cross, and it seemed that God's hands were in his pockets. But he was working salvation for all who would believe in him. So while it may not always appear this way, take comfort in what God's word says. He is El Ra'ai. He is the God who sees and cares. He is near to the brokenhearted. He is aware of the overlooked, and he is working in the midst of the darkness for good. So Be happified today with this vision of God. He is El Ra'ai. He is the God who sees me. Have a great day.